Let's jam. All right there, Outliers. How are you? Niiamah Ashong here. And thank you so much for listening to the Outliers Edge podcast, where we take people who have created unconventional success, who do it in what feels conventional to them. It's just another Tuesday. And we go into their journey and we find out the mindsets, the tools, the systems, and just basically what keeps them on their edge as they're going out to create their next edge of greatness, whatever that might be. Today, we are in an amazing place here. We got a chance to talk to Pete McPherson. Pete, it's an absolute pleasure to be in conversation with you. We were connecting before here, and I'm just, I get excited for where this conversation will go. Thank you very much for making the time to be here.
Dude, of course. Thank you so much for having me, Emma. I'm excited too. I really am.
Yeah.
I like to talk, so this is great.
You and me both. So let's start off here, Pete, with what I want to do here is just ground myself in you, and I like to start each thing here by just sharing a bit of a reflection of who you've been for me here. We're still getting to know each other, but it's beyond. Yeah, just let me just take some time to let you know who you are to me right now. Thanks. I had to breathe that in because there's a lot of things that are coming in fresh, right? But what I get about you is that you're someone who is incredibly intentional, and and has lived a life where, ooh, I guess the way I would put it is, there's a couple of different things playing out right now. I just got this picture of Men in Black in my head, where Will Smith says, "You know the difference between me and you? I make this look good."
Love
Right?
that movie.
Yeah. And there's something in there, Pete, where I feel that from what I get about you is you can do all the things that everyone else is doing, but there's also a way that you do it in a way that feels good, looks good, based on your definitions. And I see you, and I think when I think about intentionality, I think that what is coming up for me is you're someone who chooses the definitions of what you want success to be or other things to be, and you live that out with the highest degree of integrity that you can. And
Mhm.
it's a pleasure to really be in conversation with you. We'll expand on more of that in a bit, but I think it's that dedication and that high degree of integrity towards it that really strikes me as something different about you. And so I thank you, and I'm really looking forward to this conversation wherever it may go.
Yeah. Thank you. Can I say something kind of funny?
Yeah.
You mentioned defining success and being intentional, and I'm gonna let you get into the questions. But a couple of years ago, I had I guess you could call her a business coach. I had a business coach challenge me on what is your definition of success? Not like the 10-second version either, but really think about it and all that you do and all your work and your life. And she asked me again, she asked me again, and I had pretty terrible answers. And it was really clear that I actually had not thought it through up until that point. And I just want to share my answer to her that I said a couple of years ago. I eventually figured it out. This is going to sound a little childish, and it is. My definition of success was finding a way to do my work without having to do the things I didn't want to do, without having to do the things I don't want to do. I say it sounds childish because I have two young kids. That's what my kids do, right? I don't want to do that. And then they throw a big fuss. And then it's no, I spend my entire life only doing the things that I want to do. And yeah, that freedom of time, which I know we're going to talk about, was my definition of success. So just a little anecdote before we get
I love
started.
that. I have two little ones, a 3.5-year-old and a 14-month-old.
Oh
And
man.
so very much in the I want stage of it.
Oh, you're in the thick of it, yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's so funny. People know that comes, they're like, oh, okay, yeah.
14-month. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
The what I one of the things I loved about that is I have a distinction of childish versus childlike. And I think when I hear this, it is childlike. And what you said, a child might say this. However, you approach it with the maturity of lived experience. And so there's something in there that really resonates through. And yeah, I don't know how, like I've been trying to spend some time trying to define different words for me. Like, what is freedom? What does that actually mean? What
Mm,
it like, and so some of the things that you're bringing up right now also feel good. It's like, yeah, the ability to do the things that I want to and none of the things that I don't. I'm like, yeah,
mm.
that feels pretty free, actually.
Yeah.
Um, so let's do this because I do want to dive into some of the to expand on these topics here. I think it'd be really good, firstly, to give the outliers listening here an opportunity to hear more about you, get a sense as to like who you are and the kind of the context from which all that we're going to
Yeah.
talk about like takes place. Mind giving us a little bit about giving a little bit of a frame?
Yes, absolutely. I'm gonna give you the medium length version.
Cool.
So I'm a podcaster myself, and I've kind of have my own story down to like three different versions. There's like a 30-second version, and
Yeah.
then there's like a 10-minute version. I'm gonna give you
Yeah.
like the medium one.
All right. Awesome.
So my name's Pete. I would tell everybody who asks, "What do you do?" I would tell everybody at this point that I'm just a serial entrepreneur. People kind of get that. They kind of understand, oh, we sort of get what that is. So here's the background. I never knew what I wanted to be when I grew up, right? We ask our children these things all the time. What do you want to be when you grow up? And they ask you in middle school and high school, and as you're looking at colleges, like, what do you want to do? What do you want to be when you grow up? I had no idea, right? Never in my entire life. Still to this day, I might even argue, like, I just never had that. I did. Some kids wanted to be a lawyer. Some kids wanted to be a fireman or a ballet dancer. I had none of that. So I went to college on a music scholarship. I was a percussionist and I was actually, I think, really good at it. And I didn't know what else to do. So I was like, okay, well, let me try this. I got about 2.5 or 3 years into my degree and then I quit. The burnout. I didn't want to be a professional musician. I didn't want to teach. I didn't want to be a band director. I was like, this really stinks. I've been at this for a couple of years, but I got to switch. So I'll skip over the next part of the story. But the point is, I went through like four different college majors over the next like year and a half. And again, just not knowing what I wanted to do. I ended up getting a degree in sociology because I thought it was really interesting. And at the time, people were saying, "Oh, just get a degree. You'll be able to get a job." Well, this was pre 2008 financial crisis, and by the time I graduated, it was actually 2009, and no one was hiring for sociology anything. Totally fine. So I went to a mentor, uh, aka a childhood friend of my parents, who was the dean of business at a smaller college in my hometown. And I was like, his name was Doug. Excuse me, Dub. Dub, what do I do in my life? I'm freaking out here. And he was like, "You were a musician, right?" It's like, "Yeah." He's like, "Oh, you should do accounting. It's the same thing," which we won't talk about. But I was like, I don't understand. But he said, people are hiring accountants and you can make money. And I like money. This is great. I'm going to be an accountant. So I got my master's degree in accounting over the next like 2 years. I got my first grown up job in accounting. I got my CPA license. I was starting to make a bunch of money. I got promotions every year, and I went through the audit chain, and then I worked for like a billion-dollar hospital thing, corporate America, right? Corporate America. But I also lived in Atlanta and had to commute about an hour each way, 5 days a week. Couldn't work from home, and I hated it. I hated it. I wasn't impacting anybody, right? There was no fulfillment in my honestly pretty boring accounting job. And so it was about a decade ago, I discovered, quote unquote, discovered entrepreneurship, some side hustles. I was into content creation. I loved blogging and podcasting and making videos, and I just love creating content on the internet. So over the next couple of years, I started probably like 30 or 40 different online businesses. None of them really made money at all, right? But it was fun and I wanted to do it. And so I wanted out of my accounting job. I ended up quitting and I took a part-time startup job, I guess you could call it. They were going to still pay me salary and benefits, but I only had to work half time. So I could, start side hustles and grow that up in the meantime. And it was like the best of both worlds. So this was in a different town. It's actually back in my hometown. So I picked up, we sold our house, my wife and I, and our child, and she was pregnant with our second child. She quit her work. We moved sold our house and moved back up to my hometown, a couple of hours away from Atlanta. And I went to this new job. I got one paycheck and then I got laid off. So at this point, well, the tears were shed for one. I didn't know what I wanted to do still. I could probably go back and get another accounting job, or I could try out this whole entrepreneurship thing. So that is the backstory. I'm actually going to stop right there to give you a chance to, if you want to ask any questions about that, I'm more than happy to answer. But the Do You Even Blog podcast, which I technically still run, although Do You Even Blog is not my main business, it was born right then and there with me asking people, how do you make money on the internet? I don't know. I stink at this. I've tried and I haven't made money. Please teach me everything you know. That was me starting a podcast. And that seemed to resonate with people. And since then, I've had like about 30 businesses here and there and been all over the place. And that's it. Believe it or
All
not,
right.
that was the medium version.
So there's a couple of different things here. Thanks, Pete. And also just like it's fun. Like you're like, oh, I know I'm going to give some space now, like because you have a podcast as well. So it's like it'd be good to give space in there. It's something that's fun. It's like there's a remind us. What's the name of your podcast that you currently do on? Because I think I want to tie things together on it.
Yeah. The Do You Even Blog podcast.
Awesome. All right. And you have like you talked about some other things that you're building out right now. You have something else that's like less about like business and things. What's that one?
I don't know. I lost count of actually how many ongoing projects I have. The
That's such a
past,
cool move, by the way. Like I literally wrote that out. Like I feel like you're professionally unfocused. You know, like
oh
you're
yeah,
professionally able to like
yep.
just like dive in, and it works for you.
Oh yes, very much so. Intentionally,
Yeah.
intentionally unfocused.
Yeah. So like tell me about that because that is like there, there's a way that you live and create your life. You're like, I have 30 business, like the idea of that right now would be like, man, that's so much work, you know? But like you don't seem like you're stressed by it. You don't feel like
No,
you're like, hey,
no.
this is where I'm at. I did 4 additional majors, like, I did accounting. I was an actuarial consultant. So I spend my time in that
Oh,
space. So
fun.
yes, I've done my fair share of audits as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, just tell me a little bit about. Okay,
Yes.
I think there's two parts that are coming in, right? I think from a context perspective that I want to get into is like you have 30 businesses, like you're able to do all these different things. Like, how did you create enough success to give yourself like the space to do what you're doing? Because I feel like there's an element of that where it's like, okay, like so what's working, so on and so forth. So let me get a bit of that because you brought us to like, do you even blog? And you're like, it's I feel like that part would be really good for us to get into. So we've been like, hey, look, this is it almost, yeah, I think what I'm looking at is like it almost I'm gonna say it clearly, like proves that like being unfocused is also its own way. But like, and I don't really care about the unfocused part. It's more like you're doing it your way. That's what I love, you know?
Yeah.
So would you mind speaking to that? Just giving us a little context here about like, hey, okay, so like for where I'm at, like this is where I took that to.
Yes. So I think everybody listening to this would probably understand what we mean by shiny object syndrome. Squirrel, right? Chasing ideas, not giving them enough time to grow, right? I think most self-employed people, most entrepreneurs figure out if they don't know already that things take time. Like it or not, we're all impatient people. We're all type A, not we're all, but a lot of entrepreneurs are
Look,
type A and
I'm not in my head about the impatient part, so you got me on
right.
that.
Fair enough. um, but I am right. I want success and I want it right now. I want to start a project and I want to have it make money today. Historically, so let's go back a little bit. 2016, 2017. 2017 is when I started Do Even Blog. Everything up until that point, I think everything I worked on, all the projects, I had multiple blogs, I had multiple podcasts. At that time, this was unintentionally unfocused. I was just impatient. That's the truth of the matter. I mean, really clearly, I think some of the things that I started could have worked. They could have grown an audience. They could have made money. They could have supported my lifestyle. But to be really frank, I was just too impatient and I would quit. I would get bored. I would get lazy and then I'd see something else more shiny, right? And I would want to do that. Truth be told, there was a lot of that. I mean, it was 100% on me, if that makes any sense. So Do You Even Blog came about, and I think it was the first time in my entire life. I mentioned I never figured out what I wanted to be when I grew up. About this time was when I realized whatever this work is, spoiler alert, I think it's just entrepreneurship. But at the time I didn't know that. It just felt like work. The podcast, talking about business, starting companies. At the time, it felt like this is what I've been searching for my entire life. I didn't know what to call it. I just knew it felt right. I was 30, I don't know how old I was, but I was old enough at this point for it to make a difference, right? And so I stuck with it. Like focus. What you read about in the books, right? Focus, focus, focus. I focused on Do You Even Blog? And I did that for 5 years. Everything I did, all products, all marketing channels, all everything, right? Everything fell up into Do You Even Blog and I grew it. And it didn't make money immediately, really, but it was enough to kind of keep going. And eventually, after a couple of years, especially, it was quote unquote sustainable, right? It was enough income to survive and put food on the table for my two kids and yada yada. So hopefully that was a little bit more context, but I want to talk about this next transition because I think this is important for anybody listening to this. Your audience are the go-getters, but and even I mean having outliers in your name, and you mentioned this off air. Everybody listening to this also is probably searching and trying to amplify what they do differently. Maybe it's how they run their business differently or how they work or like whatever that is. This is my differently, what I'm about to say the next couple of minutes. So I burnt out on Do You Even Blog in like 2021. 2021. I mean, there was like a slow decline of burnout, but at 2021, it was just like, I'm so tired of all of this. I don't like what I do when I wake up in the morning. I want to do other things. I have so many other things I could be doing that I'm excited about. I have an idea list for different content projects like YouTube channels or podcasts or blogs, apps I want to build, businesses to start. Like I got a full list, but I haven't been doing them for 5 years because I've been focus, focus, focus. And so it took me 2 years, Niiamah, to really figure out what do I want? What's the definition of success? And am I okay being that person? I want to say that again because I think this is super, super important. This is like a 2 year struggle for me. What do I want? What is my definition of success? And am I okay being that person? So
I
let's
love
start
that you
with,
call out like just even the 2 year process of this year,
oh, yeah.
right? Because it's like because it feels like oh we should snap your fingers and just have the answers to this year, but it's like these are three simple questions, but it doesn't mean that they're easy questions.
Oh, for
And that
sure.
last one really gets me. That like
Yeah.
am I like cool? I see it, but like do I even want to be this person? Am I okay with that here? So take
Yeah.
take us a little bit further, but like I want
Yes.
to keep playing with that.
Yes. This is just for me personally at this point. Definition of success. I mentioned this when we first started, but basically freedom of time. It took me a while to figure this out. I thought I was chasing money, revenue, clout, follower count, email subscriber count, how big my email list is. Like I thought I was chasing some of these other things blindly, and it took me several months to kind of figure out what is most important to me, and that's freedom of time. And this was like 2.5, no, this was like 3.5 years ago or 3 years ago. At this point, I nailed it. I was correct in my thinking. Freedom of time is my absolute value. It's a thing that I prioritize on anything I do. I get to work on whatever I want to work on whenever I want to work on it. This to me is just crazy success in life, right? Um, you mentioned earlier, I think about finances, or you mentioned it, by the way. We'll come back to that. I feel like I do think that we all need a minimum threshold for it's different for everybody, right? of what we need to have in our checking account to survive and thrive and save for retirement. I have that, right? It took me a while to build that up, but I have that. Um, so we can come back to that if you want, but I want to move forward. So success, freedom of time, intentionally unfocused. So I have shiny object syndrome. I have all these ideas. I had burnout with Do You Even Blog, and I felt terrible stopping Do You Even Blog and working on other things. I felt like a failure. I feel like people were going to judge me. Spoiler, no one cares. I feel like people were going to judge me when I was like, I need to work on, I'm going to start this other thing. I have another blog. It's on mechanical keyboards, by the way. This is stupid. I'm holding this up for the camera here, but
Yeah.
I'm into mechanical keyboards, or
If you
most
want
of
to
the
see
time.
it, jump onto this episode when it goes onto YouTube right here. Like
Yeah,
it's yeah.
I've got a lot. I got a lot of cool. I have like over 100 at this point, which we could talk about.
Okay.
So I'm into mechanical keyboards. It's super nerdy, but it's fun. I want to start a blog on this. I did the research. I know I can make money. I know I can generate revenue and a YouTube channel or whatnot. I want to do this. I want to do that. And I just couldn't bring myself to like really do it. And whenever I would work on like different projects like this, side projects, again, I would come back to this idea of, is this a mistake? Am I leaving money on the table because I'm not focusing on Do You Even Blog? Because I'm not tripling down, right? I have something that's kind of working. Like, am I doing something stupid here? And I kept saying yes, right? I kept feeling terrible. I kept feel like I was letting people down. My audience, my family, right? Like I kept feeling that way for I would say 2 years, honestly, but especially like the first 6 months.
Just you know,
And
like this is really hitting me right here. So keep going. Like
yeah,
you're speaking to me right here.
yeah. Um, I don't have any magic answers, but I do think what you said a minute ago about underscoring the fact that it did take a super long time is really important. It stinks, but it is. I eventually figured out a way to structure everything I do so it's not really unfocused. I'm skipping ahead a little bit here, but I do a lot of different things now. Mostly I code these days. I've shipped, I think six, you could just probably call them apps. They're all web apps, software, SaaS companies. I've shipped six different SaaS companies over the past year. And that's where I've been spending probably like 80, 90% of my time. And I shifted there's two things. Number one, I shifted my mindset of who I am and what I do. This is the last part of the story. Yeah, man, then I'm gonna shut up for a minute. Um, 2 years ago at a conference, this was before I started coding, but I had like about a dozen websites. I had two YouTube channels and I had two podcasts. And somebody asked me at a conference, "What do you do?" And I thought I had this answer down for years, but I blathered out like 3 minutes of like, I don't even know what I said, but it was probably horrible. And this stranger who I'd never met, who was just being polite, probably asking me what I did, was like, uh, it sounds like you just own a media company. And it was an offhand remark, but I thought about that, no joke, for like literally weeks. I was like, I own a media company. It's not that I actually cared about owning a media company. What I cared about was defining myself and what success is and what failure is. And having 12 different blogs, if your success is one project making a lot of money, that's a failure. But if your definition of success is a media company, which is that's totally different, right? It's a mindset shift. And so, spoiler, I said serial entrepreneur earlier. This is what I tell people now because that's what I do. I see opportunities and I run after them. And I've structured everything to where I still am making enough money. If I don't, I'll do something different. Right. But it hasn't yet. I've been doing this like intentionally unfocused approach for almost 3 years at this point. And it's been fine. The keyboard brand was up to like $3,000 or $4,000 a month. Right. It's not anymore because Google crushed it, by the way. So I had to do something different. Um, one of my apps made like $25,000. I literally worked on it last fall and that's it. Right. And it's still earning revenue now. And I'm going to do these other things. So I'm kind of got off topic, so I want to shut up. But
So I don't know if you got off topic at all. I think that there's I feel like you're intentionally unfocused, and we'll play with that, right? So what I'm gonna do, there's a couple different things. So firstly, just thank you for bringing in. I'm gonna reflect back some things right here, and I'm reflecting this back because uh, one of the things I appreciate about you, Pete, is that you are gaining skill set in the skills that you want to gain in it, right? And I like there's a coolness to me about the unfocused part because like it's just like, oh yeah, there's so many different things I want to do. There's a coolness in that. And at the same time, like what I like even more is like I'll keep coming back to it. It's just like it happened to be being unfocused. Let's use that like as a skill set. The skill set of being like productively unfocused. Like I think that you're really good at it, you know? Like to the point where you're like, I'm professionally unfocused and I do that through like whatever it is, right? I think that is such a cool. I think underneath all of that, it's not like, hey, like here goes how to be unfocused or anything like that. That's not where the conversation is going. What I love is like you're is like, how can I? You've been on a decades long journey of how can I just be true to myself and how can I create something that works for me,
Hmm.
and like regardless of how other people might think about it or like what is the conventional wisdom and such like and you've done the conventional wisdom, you're like, okay, fine, I'll focus, and you got results from it. You're like, hey, look, this was good, you know but it wasn't what I'm also thinking I'm getting from was like it was financially good but it wasn't holistically good, right? And so like it wasn't hitting the actual definition of what real success was for you, even though for other people it's like, yeah, he has the business, he has this one thing. So I
Hmm.
like that to me really like I get that. I get that. I like to focus on that because for you it might be unfocused. For me, it might be like I love community. I just love bringing people together. But I'm
Yeah.
supposed to solve one, and I love bringing different types of people together because that's where I think innovation happens and so on and so forth. But I'm supposed to have one avatar. I'm supposed to do one thing and solve it for that one person. And there's one like, and just keep filtering it down and not make it too bright. And so I hear this and I'm like, well, if he could do unfocus, I can totally go and bring a lot of people together and just do
Yeah.
do my thing, you know? So like
Oh,
what's your thoughts on any of that as we keep riffing?
I have two things: a wall and a plan. Don't let me forget about the plan.
Okay.
I'm going to answer your question the long way. I just thought about this. I've never really described it as a wall before, but this is what happened. So, do you even blog? I did quote unquote focus on it for a number of years. And truthfully, I hit a wall. And it was this wall of up before the wall was the stuff I wanted to be doing, loved my work, looked forward to literally everything, created a bunch of products, but they were all under one brand. And I just enjoyed just about every piece of the puzzle. And it was growing nicely. And at some point, the wall for me was I no longer enjoy what I'm doing. I have to solve problems that I didn't have before. So, for a lot of people starting a business, it might be hiring. For me, that's part of the wall. I reached a point where I am not going to grow anymore. There's not going to be any more money. There's not going to be any more email subscribers. Actually, it's funny. My email subscribers were like right at this wall point. I was still gaining a bunch of email subscribers, but they were unsubscribing at like the same rate. So it's just
Yeah,
like
just
it never
you got
goes.
to equilibrium, right? So this is like
Yeah.
we talk about like I'll use words like churn and everything here in here. So it's like you got to the hypothetical like asymptote, right? It's like, oh yeah, like if you're losing 10% of people, and
Yeah.
you're gaining this like at this rate, you're like I was gaining them and losing them basically at the same exact rate,
Yeah. But in
essentially.
order to actually grow any more,
Yes.
I was going to have to do things that I didn't want to do. And I was struggling with it.
Yes.
I tried to hire people and it didn't work out. Then I tried
Yes.
again and it didn't work out. And I tried again, it didn't work out. And at some point, this is what led to the burnout. I was like, I want to do what I have done the past 5 years, right? I don't want to do all these other things, even though that's what I need to do if this is going to grow, right? Stay focused on Do Even Blog and grow it meant doing things I didn't actually want to be doing. And pretty strongly didn't want to be doing, I might add. Not just like small annoyances, but it was like this feels like two jobs now and then some, and I hated it. So that's the wall. I just kind of it's the first time I've ever described it as a wall, but that's what it felt like. Sort of unrelated. I meant to bring this up earlier. for this idea of intentionally unfocused. So it took a while, again, like everything I've talked about in this entire episode. But when I started venturing off into new platforms, new projects, new businesses, or whatever, I did have to figure out exit strategies. What's my exit strategy? I don't want to be stuck on this one thing forever. I also don't want to I don't want to set myself up for failure if I'm going to be unfocused, quote unquote. I don't really consider it unfocused, but if I'm going to be doing all these different projects, what is my exit strategy for each one? Right? Is it something that literally goes on forever? You mentioned community earlier. I had a private community, a membership, which was thriving for like 3 years. And I loved it, by the way. I still miss it, to be honest. There are great people in there. We even did in-person retreats, and it was just great. But there was no end date to that. There was just you show up every month, you do live calls, you put out new content, you interact with members, you log into Slack every day, and you respond to people. I didn't like that. Right? That's not an end date. That's just like an ongoing commitment. And if I want to do this other thing now, I have to somehow balance all the things. I don't want to balance. There's no balancing. Pete's life. I don't balance well. What I do is sprint really hard on one thing, and intentionally it has to have an exit strategy before I even get involved with it. Sometimes it just exists, even though it doesn't need my continual involvement. That's why I've been doing the apps more recently. People are still using it and paying it, but I haven't worked on it in months. I love that. I love that, right? That fits my lifestyle. But plan, right? Plan. Each project has to have a planned exit strategy now to allow this unfocused thing. There you go. That's all I got.
Hey, this is fun. So just to make sure I'm doing my part here to make sure I remember it, reminded. This is the plan, right? The exit strategy is the plan part. You had the wall and the
Yes.
plan. All right, cool.
Yeah.
So with the wall, you got to a place where it's like, hey, look, you were able to what I hear, because I'm actually in a space right now where I'm experimenting with what you described up into the wall, which is like, okay, I have so many different ideas. What if I just put it all into this like one path, one business, and just kept building out and being creative in this. Now that I think I was already there. I think what gets me is like the idea of like taking it. I decided I'm like, I want to be an 8-figure entrepreneur because I was like, well, that's going to require me to keep learning skills and keep playing with these things in a new way, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm like, there's always going to be something new I need to learn, because even if it's about how do I make this even more efficient, I'm going to get less return. It's going to feel less. It's going to feel not as good as the moment I put up a new podcast and it's like something happening, but we'll be good with that. So I hear you on the wall. There's some things in here I'm like, oh, I'd love to explore with you. The exit, like, I'm glad you even mentioned the private community, the membership here, because I've been thinking for a while, like, do I want to go back to, do I want to build membership? I build like Suda. I do coaching, I have group coaching and membership, but I started out my real entrepreneurial journey to build a community of people, you
Mm.
know? But there wasn't enough power in that community, meaning that I was just doing like, oh, it's Thankful Thursdays, said like there wasn't anything in there. And now I'm like, oh, I brought power in. I can actually speak. I'm no longer like not afraid of speaking, but afraid of being like actually saying what I meant, like that part, like really like talking,
Yeah.
um, uh, and sharing an experience of truth with people like that's like, now let's just go. I can facilitate in that. And so it was really interesting. And then you said the thing that was actually really interesting to me, which is no end date. And I actually really love that. I'm on the thing of like, well, if I created it, I want to just like, I want to get dividends forever on it. And then let me just create the thing that I want to do and just be able to do that over and over again with enough flexibility inside of it. Right. So this is where, again, where I love this component of like, you just did you so well, you just keep doing you. And you're like, all right, I found that one of the constraints that like helps me do me is to have an exit plan, an exit strategy in every single thing that I do. So I can keep taking on things, but I can keep leveling up. I also heard that another thing that you had was around both the container of what it is that you do and the identity that you took on. right? So like the media companies like led to being a serial entrepreneur because you're like, yeah, it makes sense. For you're a serial entrepreneur, then you have different things going on, right? You're serial entrepreneur, concurrent entrepreneur, like you have a lot, like there's businesses, right? I think about it for myself. Right now, you're on this podcast, but I'm very prolific, and this is actually like me in like a slower phase. I'm only releasing 5 episodes a week right now, and it's like, yeah, but I have other things I could be doing. I could be doing like lives. Like I enjoy the content game. I enjoy spending time talking to people.
Yeah.
Really, that's what I love.
Can I
Uh
can I
yeah,
interrupt you for 1 second?
I
So
would love it.
you're doing something brilliant for a few different reasons, and I just want to highlight it.
Please.
So I was originally going to tack on this idea of building an audience, and some of the most successful, oh, I don't know what we should call ourselves, people who do lots of different projects that are seemingly unrelated. Most of the people who do that have some sort of audience that follows them around in some way. Maybe it's an email list or whatever it is. I have just now, just the past couple of months, started to rebrand everything away from Do You Win Blog back to Pete. Right? I'm trying this. This is all a little new. I'm not great at it, but I've been trying to get like an audience to follow me around. But I think there's something equally important, and that is people, not necessarily in your audience, relationship. People, that you've heard this in movies like a million times, like business is about relationships or something, right? Well, it's true. We all know this, right? No one listening to my voice right now is surprised by this, but I now think it's even more important. The more people can start businesses with ChatGPT, like AI building you an app or building you a business or setting up anything for you, the more AI is involved, the faster our culture moves, the more important these relationships become, in my opinion. Again, I think most people would already agree to that. Niiamah starting a podcast, by the way, 5 a week, to me, that sounds like insanely prolific. I don't think I've ever done more than 3 a week, even in my best week. And now it's like once every 3 months. No, but the point is, you're building contacts, you're building relationships. You don't know what's going to come from meeting Pete today. We don't know. Maybe we'll work together. Maybe you'll just shoot me an email asking for a referral 3 months from now. And now we have a contact point, right? Or maybe it's something more serious, maybe it's something less serious, but you never know. And my current story with this is, I mean, literally 2 weeks ago, quite literally 2 weeks ago, I sent out a random tweet on Twitter or X or whatever the cool kids are calling it these days. Like, hey, I'm thinking about selling this app. Hang on 1 second. Okay. I'm thinking about selling this app for, I don't know, I put like $20,000. Here's some specs. Here's what it does. Send me a DM if you're interested. No DMs. Stupid tweet. Until the next day, where somebody who I'd never heard of was like, "Oh, I see you're friends with so and so. This looks really cool. I think it's overpriced, but if you ever feel like dropping the price, just let me know." And I was like, "I'll drop the price. What do you want?" Right? Like, let's talk. And so, sure enough, this dude's name's Todd. Super cool. And we have friends of friends that he was like, "Oh, you know this person. I know this person. You've had him on your podcast. I know this person." Like, there was enough of that where now I'm selling half of my app to him, not the whole thing, and he's going to do the work that I don't want to do. He runs a social media and SEO agency, so he's going to like blast it out, and then we're going to sell it in 12 months, right? The point is people, relationships. We all know this, but everything I've talked about today, unfocused, working on this project or this project, having people, both your audience and relationships, like contacts, people in your niche, people in your industry, friends, whatever that is. Again, it couldn't be more vital to my own story. Like none of what I do would ever have worked if it weren't for having people on the podcast, growing up the audience, and that sort of stuff. So you mentioned like your own podcast and having other ideas and stuff. I was like, don't stop because you're 460-ish episodes, I think I saw, or something like
Something
that,
like
really
that.
close.
Yeah.
Dude, yeah. Relationships, people.
I appreciate that, Pete. Like this has been I'm glad we're starting this relationship. I would let people here know, like one of the things here, Outliers, that got me to really smile. Like when I jumped on the call with Pete, he's like, just so you know, like I don't put meetings on my calendar. You know, I don't put
Yep.
meetings on my calendar. So it's cool to like we're going to conclude here on the relationships part here, but like it just really, I really am glad to know you. And I'm glad that you're choosing to live the life that you are living because it is inspiring to me to live the life that I want to live. And I am really glad that we didn't jump over the wall. Like not like you didn't, but like we didn't skip over that part. I'm glad that we didn't skip about like how long it took just to define what success really meant for you,
Yeah,
and then
for
to
sure.
actually believe in it. And then like to take all the time of building out something. Like, look, I did the thing and I had fun while I was doing it. I found a way to have fun inside of it. And then it was no longer fun. And so then I allowed myself to go have fun in other areas. I'm glad we
Yep.
talked about the who you see yourself as, and what you like. I was literally talking about this earlier. I was like, as a business person, I feel that very narrow. I feel like I have to converge onto one answer. But as a movement leader, I'm like, that's super emergent. Like the movement can just do whatever it needs to. I don't need like I can't control the movement. I can
Yeah.
guide it to until someone else comes and takes it over. Even as we're talking, I'm like, oh, this makes sense. This. I should go back to movement. You know,
Yeah.
like,
Uh,
go ahead, please, and then we're gonna
oh
wrap
no.
up for today.
Yeah. Do you have a couple more minutes? I don't.
Yeah,
I can say it.
yeah.
This is
I
just a. Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, go ahead. Please do. I do have to take off in like the next minute or so, but I want to make sure we're
Oh
good.
no.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay. I'll tell you what. I'll tease it for some other time,
Mm,
or you know what? I'll actually set myself up to actually write a blog post about this because I don't have anything public on this.
yeah,
I have a spreadsheet. I think it's called the trifecta something. Trifecta. Stupid name. This isn't public, but I think I included it in an email. I eventually had a hard time managing all of my projects and
yeah,
different ideas, stuff I'm currently working on, stuff I want to work on, like all this other stuff. So I went through the exercise. This is the short version, I promise. I went through this exercise of defining what are the factors that I care about. And for me, it was three things, hence the trifecta. How much energy do I have to work on this project? Does it have the potential to make big time bucks, like millionaire overnight sort of money? What is that percentage, right? Does it have at least a 1% chance to blow up and be really successful? And does it have at least an 80% chance, like a much higher chance to make a little bit of money? Doesn't have to be a much, even if it's only like $100, $300 a month, whatever that is. Is there like a really high certainty of doing that? And so I created this spreadsheet called the trifecta. I listed all my projects, and now I grade all three of those things. How much energy do I have? Small chance to make big money, big chance to make small money, 1 through 10. And then I literally just like sort in Google Sheets, right? And
yeah.
whichever one's at the top is generally the one that I work on next or the
See,
one that I pour energy into.
I'm so glad you brought this up because like this to me is like the intentional part of the unfocused part, right? You are doing like you have decisions, you have a system that allows you to do this in a way that continues to play dividends to you. you
Right.
know like it's
Yes.
not it's
Yes.
like you become better and better and better at being unfocused. You're like, okay, well, I can be unfocused on all these different ideas. I'm at least going to choose which one, like use this criteria, the trifecta, to be able to choose which one to focus on next. you know
Right.
like it's a
Yeah.
cool it's a cool thing, and I really want to. For me, that's something that's just like a major takeaway for me, which is just like if you're gonna be who you are,
Yeah.
be the best. Build, and like this is what I talk about. Like I say, like Outliers Edge is about helping people build like the systems and resources and tools to like be all of who they are and bring it out into the world, right? And it comes down to this. It's like, what is your way of onboarding? What's your way of like whatever it ends up being? Because you found your way. You're like, I could do a bunch of different things. And as long as I have like what I find right now is if I have an exit strategy and a criteria to help me determine what I should focus on next, we good.
Totally.
And so that's absolutely phenomenal. Pete,
Yeah.
let's end this conversation with two things here. We're gonna have to keep this part short because I do have to take off, but I want to like I just think we might. I don't know how we get more time on at some point. Well, I'm like I know you don't take a lot of meetings, but I think it'll be a part two at some point. Here's the questions I have for you. If anyone wants to continue down this journey, if they want to find out more about you, find out about any of the businesses you're doing, any of the podcasts you're on, like what's the best way for them to continue down the journey with you, Pete?
Great question. PeteMcPherson.com. Or you can go to Google and type in Pete McPherson. And at this point, my stuff will show up, which is really great. Yay. So I send out a weekly newsletter. It's mostly just a roundup of stuff that will make the internet fun again and interesting
Nice.
and useful. So PeteMcPherson.com.
All right, I love it. All right. And then one last thing here, Pete. I like to leave with what I call the time capsule question, which is a message that you would leave for yourself to your future self, right? What's one thing that you would like with the knowledge you have right now? What's something you want to remind Pete of, like, let's say in 10 years? What's something that Pete would be like, oh, thanks.
Yeah. Kids are the most important thing in your life.
And there we have it. With that, I am absolutely like I'm grateful for you, Pete. Thanks for the conversation. Thanks for being who you are. Thanks for living the way that you do. It's really fun.
Thanks, man. I appreciate you having me on, Niiamah.